What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm taking a look at the Silent Base 800. This is actually the first case from our friends at BeQuiet, and as the name implies, the chassis is designed for silent operation, a refreshing change from all those cases designed to be loud. The mid-tower measures 495mm deep by 266 wide by 559 tall and comes in black, though you do have the option of orange, black, or silver accents along the front side panel as well as some rubber parts inside. The front exterior is made of plastic with a sexy brushed grain finish that seems to be much less prone to fingerprints than aluminum, which is part of the reason why you can't tell what I was doing with it earlier. Three 5¼ bays hide behind a swinging magnetic door with hinges that can be mounted on either side of the case depending on your preference. Here we also see the door is lined with thick, dense sound dampening material for effective noise reduction. Pushing in the lower panel allows it to fold down like the bridge to a magic castle, revealing more sound dampening material, a removable dust filter for easy cleaning, and two of BeQuiet's outstanding Silent Wings 2 fans with rubber O-rings to reduce noise and vibration. To keep the fans from chronic asphyxiation, ventilation holes line both sides of the front panel from top to bottom. At the top are two USB 2 and two USB 3 ports, mic and headphone jacks, and a large power button that requires so little force to press, there should be an option in Windows for what your computer does when you sneeze. Additionally, the power button lights up white when powered on, a feature I'm calling White Power. There's also a hard drive activity light that functions as a stealthy reset button. Also on the top are a few ventilation slots that are so thin, my grandparents started dropping coins in. Popping off the top cover, we see dual 120 and 140 mounts with a slotted design, so you can position your radiator further away from the motherboard for additional radiator clearance, making push-pull configurations a possible option. Here it's also quite apparent that only the rear fan will have access to fresh airflow from those ventilation slots up top, leaving the other fan cut off like me at the bar last week. I was pleased to see large cutouts at the front and back for routing fan cables behind the motherboard tray, because the only thing more upsetting than seeing cables hanging from the rafters of your case is realizing how upset it makes you. Both side panels are identical and feature a smaller square panel in the center that has two levels of airflow adjustment if you wish to mount a 120mm fan. The squares can also be sealed closed for silent operation or be removed completely for optimal airflow. Both side panels include removable dust filters and are generously interlined with more sound insulation. In case you're doubting my confidence in the acoustic suppression of this case, at one point during my review, I misplaced my pillow and decided to scream into the Silent Base 800 instead. On the back, you get a bit more ventilation for your top fans, a 120 Silent Wings 2 fan, 3 grommets for water cooling tubes, 7 expansion slots, and a pull-out dust filter for your power supply and optional fan, which we'll get a closer look at inside. The two plastic snowmobile legs are flexible yet sturdy and have rubber feet on the bottom for added stability. They can also be easily removed, which is especially useful for putting the case on its side when building, or for that Leaning Tower of Pisa mod you've been dreaming about. Removing the side panel is done in the traditional sense by removing the two thumb screws and sliding it off. On the inside, there's nothing really new or innovative about the internal layout, but it's familiar and functional just like your mum. 4 rubber grommets line the motherboard tray for tidy cable routing, and you do get a nice cutout near the top left corner of the motherboard for your CPU connector. BeQuiet also gives us a generous cutout for the CPU cooler as well as a pre-installed courtesy standoff for the building impaired. The power supply area has cute little rubber feet to keep it quiet, right beside those bottom mounts I mentioned earlier for a 120 or 140mm fan. With a 140 installed, you get 170mm of power supply clearance, whereas a 120 fan will get you 185. At the front, we see that the 5¼ bays are toolless, and we do get 2 removable drive cages for up to 7 drives. The smaller guy can be on the bottom, as it usually goes, but even with both cages removed, there's only room for a 120 or 140mm at the front, as the irremovable drive dock blocks any chance of clearance for larger units. You heard me right, guys, you've been dock blocked. I should also mention you can fit video cards up to 11 inches long with the top cage installed. Rather than having hard drive trays, the case includes shock-absorbing rubber strips and thumb screws that mount to the sides of your 3.5-inch drives before sliding in and securing them in place with an easy slide-to-lock mechanism. Unfortunately, the slots don't support 2.5-inch drives, but instead there's an upside-down SSD mount on the top of each drive cage, a design that seems to defy gravity almost as much as it defies right-angle SATA cables. Not all is lost, however, as there are 2 more SSD mounts behind the motherboard tray, which still only somewhat make up for the seemingly limited storage support. To install, simply remove the mounting plate using the single thumb screw, screw down your SSD, and reattach the plate. Even with both SSDs installed here, cable management in this case shouldn't be much of an issue, as you do get just under an inch of space between the motherboard tray and side panel. A small critique here is that the only 4 tie-down points rung alongside the rubber grommets, and it would have been nice to see a few more by the SSD mounts to help break up the cables into groups. I don't know about you, but the last time I tried to bunch all my cables into one bundle, it formed a bulge that made me jealous. From what I can tell you during my brief time with this case, I have to applaud BeQuiet's outstanding first attempt at delivering a silent case to market that brings home nearly all the convenient features we're used to seeing at its price point of $140 US. Copious amounts of sound insulation, a solid internal layout, and the fact that Linus used this case for his recent silent PC build all validate its spot as a worthy contender among the many other silent cases currently available. For future revisions, I'd like to see more ventilation at the top, dual radiator support at the front, a few more tie-down points, and a lot more SSD mounts. But that's just my opinion. I'm curious to know what you guys think of